This is Greg Tech New Horizons. No, not this. This is Greg Tech New Horizons. And this is a YouTube video about playing modded Minecraft. And this is a theoretical deep dive that will award you with a PhD on theoretical modded Minecraftology. So, how much of a good student are you? Now, with the hype intro out of the way, let me tell you what we are actually going to talk about. Yes, no more YouTube vernacular English. A while ago, a friend of mine recommended me this video from Threefold. After that, I was inspired to jump into a sort of video discussing the meta-technical side of modded Minecraft. So yeah, welcome. Feel free to use the timestamps to skip ahead for any topic that might interest you, my good fella. And here is where I'm going to split from Threefold's video. I'll start by asking you, why do we play modern Minecraft in the first place? This question is of course connected with the why do we play games question, which itself is connected to the why do we have hobbies at all question. But I'll now be glossing over all of that and just say, well, it's because we want some sort of power over our lives that's not afforded outside the hobby space. A virtual space where I can feel like my actions have impact and where meaningful choices are presented to me? Sign me right up. This creates opportunity for a multifaceted engagement with the game world through the means of the modes of interaction that the game allows us to have with it. Game mechanics. Yep, it's the game mechanics that sets video games apart from a simple visual novel or movie. A way to directly interact with the game in an incremental, personally unique and chaotic manner. What some call emergent state behavior. If you consider the history of modern Minecraft. Minecraft was a very sandboxy game. I mean, it's still sandboxy now, but many years ago it was even more sandbox. If you ever watch a modern vanilla Minecraft video, chances are that a lot of them are either a challenge on beating the game in a particular manner, or they only really start after beating the game. This is so much so that in this video, Thright even fast forwards or montages all the building up to beating the game.
End cities, so let me beat the end real quick. Wow.
And starting the post game. And getting the Elytra, etc, 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 before starting his build video for good. But as some, or maybe even many of you might already know, before release 1.0.0 Minecraft Java, the culmination of the Adventure update and the last update where the man commonly lauded as Minecraft's creator worked on the game directly, there was no endgame. Fun fact for all you geriatric geezers out there, the gap between the first version of Minecraft in dev, a very early in development version of Minecraft, and the version of Minecraft Greg Tech New Horizons runs on, Minecraft 1.7.10, is 4 years and 6 months. A gap smaller than the gap between 1.7.10 and the most recent Minecraft version, 1.21.4, which is a gap of 10 years and 6 months. And a lot of early mods and mod packs, yes, even technical mods mod packs, were thought about less as something that exists in order to give you goals to achieve, but rather they simply existed to offer you a cool gameplay experience, to give you fun things to do and play around with. Technical mods were more about their use value rather than their grind value, and the cost of the materials and machines was mostly symbolic, and the mod pack came with no quest book or late game objectives. Of course, there was a range of experience, with some mods being more clearly overpowered and others striving for a bit more balancing. In fact, knowers will note that GregTech came about as a modification on top of a modification, Industrial Craft 2. A modification that thought that Industrial Craft 2 was not realistic and painful enough, and the rest is history. For the sake of a watchable video, let's draw some lines in the ground. We can understand the reasons of why people play modern Minecraft as people acting upon certain desires that I'll divide into two large categories. Mechanical interaction, the desire of producing certain novel mechanical interactions that are made possible by the modded gameplay. You have technical mod packs, all the mods mod packs, exploration mod packs. I cannot believe this is not Pokemon mod pack, sandbox mod packs, yada yada yada. Mechanical interactions, which I'll divide into objective-driven interactions with clearly defined progression paths and end goals, and experience-driven interactions, a desire for the game mechanics in themselves, irrespective of end goals and progression paths, the, I just want to play around with things kind of feeling. And personal desires. The things that take people into a certain modded experience that are not directly related to the modded experience itself. They are varied, as is obvious. Social interaction is one of them, as you can see through the thriving GTNH server list and all those YouTuber playthroughs that include a colorful cast of quasi-stock characters doing SMP number 100,000 million. In these cases, it is social interaction for the content creators in between themselves, but also so that the audience can pretend to have friends, as is often the case in the broken individual interactions inside our broken society. There are a whole many more personal reasons to play modern Minecraft, the standard, boredom, challenging oneself irrespective of what specific mechanics the mod pack offers, searching for new experiences, reigniting one's gamer cred, etc. For example, the thing that brought me into GregTech New Horizons was the unstoppable desire to escape the soul-crushing reality of my existence in a world that seeks to destroy me and reduce me to a simple commodity-producing machine. In exchange of transforming myself into this lifeless machine, I get the privilege of living yet another day where I produce more commodities forever until I die and everything I love withers away and is destroyed by this very same force. Anyway, little Timmy, why don't you tell me your personal, unspeakable reasons for playing your current Minecraft mod pack? Or any other game for that matter. The algorithm demands your sacrifice. Back to more emotionally regulated thoughts. Let's make this a bit more concrete. I'd like to talk to you about a personal experience I've had on this little division between object-guided and experience/sandbox-guided mechanical desire. A few years ago, me and my friend, yes, the one who showed me the threefold video, started a playthrough in this Chinese Create-based mod pack. Well, the one we wanted to play initially wasn't working, and so somehow we ended up here, forfeiting our personal data to the CCP in the process. We did some basic Minecrafting stuff, invited some other friends who didn't have much interest or free time to play this mod pack or any sort of interest in the Create mod, made some things, mined some ores, I made this very basic automatic farming thing, and yes, suffice to say this server didn't get off the ground. Many years ago, me and the same friend group had an FTP Infinity Evolved playthrough, and we got all the way up to the Chaos Dragon before we got promptly destroyed. Well, anyway, the difference with this playthrough was a discrepancy of personal and mechanical desires. Since many of my other friends were not interested in the Create mod to begin with, and my last remaining friend was uninterested in playing a very much still vanilla adjacent modpack without clear objectives, and I was uninterested in playing this modpack alone, well, no Create for anyone. So, yeah, for there even to be a possibility of Minecraft being played, a lot of things need to go right. A lot of stars need to line up in the sky, and life is short. So, how do you complete a technical mod pack? Well, of course, to complete a mod pack, you need to play it. But Minecraft is a sandbox game, and there are many ways to play it. Some mod packs are more linear, and others offer challenges that are approachable from multiple angles. In this video, we'll focus on expert technical mod packs, with some perspective on GregTech New Horizons, but not limited to it. What expert pack means, I'll further discuss soon. But what do I mean by technical mod packs? I mean mod packs that have a big factory component in them. Packs that are way more into exploration and combat, I will not be discussing here. Directly at least, even though there might be some applicable things here and there in this video. Anyway, looking at the objective focus packs out there, there is in fact a great division between so-called expert packs and beginner packs. The difference is simple, and it's not limited just to grinding, but to several factors. The difficulty of the pack. When people talk about grindiness, they're talking about a more or less proportional relationship between time investment and modpack progress, irrespective of the difficulty itself. When something is grindy, it means it requires a big time sink in order to squeeze some progression out of it. Something that is not grindy is something that rewards progression without an exhausting time investment into it. I say that this is unrelated to difficulty, since it is possible for you to have a mod pack that requires you to do many meaningless, unengaging and easy time gates that simply waste your time. That being said, GTNH is not just grindy, it's sadistic. It is grindy and very difficult. It is obvious then, the more grindy a mod pack is, the more expert oriented it is. Here is another thing that affects difficulty. How punishing is it? Something like Better Than Wolves is insanely punishing when you die, not having a gravestone mechanic and spawning you thousands of blocks away from where you died. You are not recovering those items, they are gone, and the infrastructure you built up? Good luck finding it. And no, you cannot set your spawn point, and yes, the mobs will murder you. Well, at least in GTNH. At least in GTNH, you have gravestones and spawn points, even though the mobs will absolutely murder you. Ceph Take Ages, it's kind of middling. I don't know, I never died in Ceph Take Ages, I'm just goated like that. I mean, the Stone Age boss almost had me, but he didn't have me. Speaking of deaths, in my current up to extreme voltage GTNH playthrough, I only died to a baby spider exploding in my face in night 3. And also, my second death was because I had to put myself down due to the infinite duration radiation poisoning 4 that I contracted from handling hazardous material without protection. I wasn't even dying. The regen of my terror armor more than outpaced the damage, but it was annoying enough that I had to, as the kids say, unalive myself. Here is how GTNH punishes you. Not just in the early game through the infernal mobs, but also through the rest of the modpack experience. You will constantly flinch when you hear the sound of rain. You will wonder if you've left any machines outside even though you didn't. You will quadruple check the wiring of your transformer and every machine you put down. You will be triple checking, quadruple checking if that HV superconductor works with your HV energy hatch. Not because it's likely or even possible for something to go wrong, but because it is imaginable. Another factor to difficulty: the fundamental mechanical complexity, irrespective of logistics. I say this because logistics will get their own category. What I mean by fundamental mechanical complexity is, well, just look at this modpack, Terra Firma. It requires the player to engage with a large variety of mechanics, of high complexity, in order to affect the game world in even the simplest of ways. And it is punishing to boot. Crafting a pickaxe is extremely involved, and you have cave-ins, realistic seasons, food exploration, and so on. This is actually a very interesting category, because all mods, even quality of life mods and mod packs, increase mechanical complexity simply by adding into the base game formula. The more things there are to do in the game, the more complex the game is, even if the things are not that complicated in themselves to get working. The corollary of this is that when mod packs want to add into the complexity, they really add into the complexity. The fundamental mechanical complexity of vanilla Terra Firma differs from the logistical complexity that modpacks like GTNH, Compact Claustrophobia, Sky Factory, and even FTB Infinity Evolved require of you. Not only are the mechanisms of interaction with the gameplay made more complex by having to engage with more difficult recipes and machines, but you have to chain these complexities together and have them interact with each other in a recursive feedback loop that will sink you in technical depth and leave you gasping for air as the mistakes of your past slowly catch up to you and make your life miserable. This is something I didn't like much about SafTech, because I felt that there wasn't enough of a push towards automation, so I dipped out. I think this is enough talking about difficulty. Difficulty and its balancing, and the game feel of the mechanics that build into difficulty, are a major factor in creating novelty and adding flavor to a modded experience. You don't really add difficulty into things, or rather, there is no way to add raw difficulty into a game. Difficulty is not a simple or pure aspect of gameplay that one can manipulate or create directly, but rather it emerges from the mechanical building blocks that really do define the gaming experience. There is a name for game experiences that create difficulty artificially from poorly thought out mechanics. They are called badly created rage games, and if you look at successful rage games very carefully, you'll notice that the way they build their difficulty is engaging in some way. Even in the asset-flipped Unity shovelware games, even when there is no artistic talent on display, there is at least some sort of entertainment value imbued into the rage game experience that makes the masochism bearable and gives the game appeal. Sometimes cult appeal, sometimes mainstream appeal, sometimes both. Anyways, this is enough game design ranting. Now that we have discussed modpack difficulty and the factors that go in separating beginner packs from expert packs, we can finally understand the meat of the question. The sentence, "How do we complete a technical modpack?" becomes, "How do we deal with the grindiness, fundamental mechanical complexity, and logistical complexity of a technical modpack in such a way that we enjoy ourselves and even maybe are capable of reaching the completion point of progression?" A much bigger sentence, but certainly a much more meaningful one that demystifies the problem into something we can actually engage with. Great Tech New Horizons is about a journey, not a destination. You might have heard this old adage before. Can you understand the assumptions expressed within this preposition? Yup, you guessed it. A destination assumes an end goal, the Stargate, and a journey assumes a progression towards such a destination. This is the basic philosophical understanding of all progression-based modpacks, a journey and a destination. There is something very important to understand. Finishing the modpack is simply a possible motivation to interact with the modpack. The interaction itself occurs within the progression within the modpack. The Stargate is just a MacGuffin. They could have waved any carrot at the end of the grind. We kind of touched this in the first part when we asked ourselves why play modded Minecraft and why choose this or that pack. It's all about interfacing with mechanics that stimulate you the right way. But there is also an aspect of, yes, even personal growth in it, in learning how to interact with the mechanics. The surefire way to solve any modpack doesn't begin with life hacks or even gameplay tips. Sure, those are very helpful, but if you don't have a productive go-get-em attitude and the guts to play around, you are going nowhere, no matter how many tips you get thrown at you. Something that is often said is that you need to break down your progression into small, actionable objectives. This is in itself not bad advice. But it is not great advice either. What if you just don't know where to even start dividing the progression into mini objectives? And the question we've been brushing up against the whole video, are objectives particularly useful? Time for a practical example. Imagine yourself, you're me, early EV, moving into your personal dimension. You have a MacGyver power generator set up with 4, later 6 HV generators running some basic automation in order to get your move started. So that I could properly get into EV, I needed better power generation. Since I want to take my eco-friendly oil-based energy production all the way to LUV, I'll need a large combustion engine in order to leverage it in EV. But in order to maximize fuel efficiency, we need to boost the engine with oxygen. However, that also increases overall power production from 1 EV amp all the way to 3 EV amps, which means we need a buffered EV dynamo in order to produce the power successfully. The problem is the EV dynamo requires tungsteel. Tungsteel is also useful for other electric things that I need, such as the EV transformers I'll use to upvolt and then later downvolt power in order to save on power loss and wiring, since higher voltage energy is denser. But in order to melt tungsteel, I will need TPV alloy coils, which require titanium, platinum and vanadium. Vanadium is, by GTNH standards, very easy to obtain, and I already have a bunch. Titanium, I'll need a bunch for all the EV stuff, so I'll need to automate it anyway. There are several paths to automate it, and we'll probably want to use all of them, but this is the path I'm using for now. Easy, right? And platinum is something I'll need to automate eventually for the overall game progression. I could just use the inefficient 3 metallic powders into 2 nuggets platinum recipe, but that is not sustainable and I'd rather avoid it. This is the full plotline, by the way, but we'll only use this part for now. In conclusion, I'll need to either do some minimal titanium and platinum automation, or I'll have to do a bunch of microcrafting tasks in order to get the engine I need in order to proceed in the game, and I'll probably need more than one. Of course, these automations in themselves require a bunch of things that I don't have automated, including my tier-skipped nanoprocessors. Hell yeah, nanoprocessors before going to the moon? It only costs 3 whole veins of garnerite sand, which in turn require a bunch of SMDs, and epoxy needed in order to get A2. And A2 also requires... Holy crap, everything requires so much stuff. Yes, my friend, this is the problem we are dealing with. How did we get ourselves into here? And how can we get ourselves out of here? And are we enjoying ourselves in the first place? And what are we even doing? Here comes to our rescue the magic of problem solving and modded Minecraft. Tell me, do you think goals and objectives are primary or secondary to the gameplay progression? Allow me to explain this weird question. All this stuff I just said, that I wanted to do, that I needed to do, they kinda sound like objectives, right? But what if I told you that this is only part of the gameplay experience? This is a layer of the gameplay experience in between the macro level, really long-term base planning, and the progression route evaluating layer of gameplay, and the really step-by-step, play-by-play gameplay experience. The objective stuff? It is only a way of explaining to others and ourselves our midterm course of action and reasoning on it. There are at least 2 other layers to playing any modpack. I understand that GTNH is an extreme example, but this sort of base organizational thinking occurs in many other technical modpacks. And as you can very clearly see, this is a very messy graph. Everything is dependent on each other. This is a confusing way to express ourselves, because there is a disconnect between what we want to get done and actually doing it. It is not just about setting up an EV generator, not just about material acquisition and processing, the automation for this resource processing, crafting, choosing a place to put the machine in, and even before all this, choosing what kind of EV generator to use, and how it fits in with everything, and how to even automate the generator itself so it doesn't waste resources. The objective build an EV generator hides a lot of things in itself, including things that are not so objective, including things that have to be thought about hundreds of hours before, even reaching the point where you want to build an EV generator. When looking at this mess, it makes me want to not play GTNH. It makes me want to not play Minecraft or any video game. It makes me want to give up on life. It's a mess, and anybody that tells you that you can find a way to live without this mess, they are lying. This is an inseparable part of gaming and the human experience. So, what is it to take a problem-based approach to modded Minecraft? Well, firstly you have to take a deep breath, relax and focus on the microcrafting. Focus on doing things for themselves, rather than in service of any direct objective. This is somewhat already present in batch crafting. When you make SMD transistors, you don't make them for this particular circuit, for this particular machine. This just entangles you in the misconnected miasma of objectives I described above. Quite the opposite of always making things simple. The problem of dividing things in simpler steps is that you end up with more steps, and in that way you can be very easily overwhelmed. So instead we combine material objectives with conceptual problems to help us overcome our shortcomings. Instead of just splitting things apart, we split them and we join them together into logical sets. I say that the most significant difference lies in the fact that an objective is quantifiable and a problem is qualitative. This is to say, an object can be a number of something, a machine or a concrete setup, while a problem is a conceptual analysis that cannot be attached to a number. For example, instead of this spiderweb of machine requirements, we extract from it and the rest of our gameplay experience that there exists a circuits problem that we need to solve. The final solution is quick to be envisioned and almost common knowledge. Have it be automated and integrated into a centralized factory processing system. This would work if we were playing creative mode. Unfortunately, before you can have a working factory, you first must have a somewhat working factory, and before having a somewhat working factory, you get the deal. You can't just jump straight into the final solution. You first have to pass through partial solutions. For example, for me the big thing that made circuits easy in NV is that I made an automated ore processing setup with logistic pipes. This meant that getting rare materials like gallium and tantalum was easy, and that I spent very little time manually processing ores. Just put the ore in the chest and it will come out processed. Except thermal centrifuge recipes, but I'm just lazy like that. Well, and electrolyzation and mixing lazurite into alumina, well, partial solutions. That's what I said, partial solutions. Just keep grouping your small and actionable progression goals into large-scale generalized logistical problems and everything will go well. Otherwise, you'll just keep grinding up against the game trying to complete increasingly difficult progression objectives, and everything will become a slog. Honestly, this is another of the reasons I bounced off Tech ages. Be it my fault or the Modpack's fault, the progression goals just didn't coalesce together into unified experiences. It just felt like checklist after checklist, task after task, and nothing was coming together. Everything was just segregated. Now that we can identify problems, how do we fix them? You'll be happy to know that there are several ways to think about the building up of factories in modern Minecraft. I'd like to first begin with a disclaimer. The thing that inspired my style for my GTNH playthrough was my failed Factorio Piano Dance playthrough. In case you don't know, Piano Dance is the GTNH of Factorio. That really doesn't say much, but it is a really grindy, really logistical complicated Factorio mod. In Piano Dance, I was so worried about thinking ahead, not wasting resources, rushing a train base, and not just covering the map with ugly automation setups that I ended up with a very dysfunctional, very confusing base. So with this lesson in mind in GTNH, I didn't even flinch in doing lots of early automation, even if it is inefficient or unnecessary. Because in this sort of mods, if you can reduce the amount of labor time you have to personally invest in the day-to-day maintenance of the factory, the better. There is a basic currency that follows these sorts of mod packs. You put work in, all the rest follows. You are constantly transforming your time, brain cells and wrist tendons into resources, production infrastructure and base decoration. Yes, that's important, we'll get into that. In-game items by themselves have no value, well, maybe aesthetic value. What gives them value is the work you put into them. After all, you can't take your Minecraft diamonds into real life with you. They are very useless virtual objects. Their use value coexists only within the framework of the game and your engagement with it. Yet, because you have to engage with the game and you do not plan to play in creative mode, you'll have to suffer. The easier a mod pack is, the less time you have to invest. The harder a mod pack is, the more you have to invest. It's that easy. How you invest your time and based on what you invest your time in a mod pack will determine your experience with it. Will you invest your time into making a base beautiful? How intricate will your automation designs be? And with what game mechanics will you engage with? Mod packs have many mods, but most of the time there are several alternatives to do the same thing, and a lot of time they have tiers that are gated by game progression. Botania, Thaumcraft, Industrial Craft, Draconic Expansion, Forestry Breeze, Forestry Trees, yes, even Galactic Craft, etc. Which progression paths will you follow and which will you ignore? And just a really quick segment about aesthetics is that if you live around an ugly base, your experience will feel ugly. It will be demotivating working in a space that you don't feel comfortable with. Anyway, whatever the approach that you choose, there are two factors that you must constantly balance: the tendency for technical depth to accrue and the necessity for the progress that creates this very same technical depth. Fun fact, if you throw enough time at a problem, it will go away. It is absolutely conceivable to finish a mod pack without automating a single thing, even in GTNH. It's just that for mod packs that expect you to make things easier for yourself, this is to say, mod packs that expect you to play smart or mod packs that don't respect your time in the best of days, will probably take several human lifetimes to complete. Yes, I'm talking about Piano Dance as well. And even vanilla Factorio, you can finish it without automation. There's actually a very famous video out there of how much time you'd have to waste to finish Factorio without automation. Well, anyway, the basic intuition of automation is, why waste your time working when machine can work for you? That being said, in a lot of mod packs, even the most basic form of automation will be enough to put you ahead of the standard deviation expected progress curve. But hey, you'll be able to feel pretty smug about it, and that is priceless. That being said, every modpack offers its own flavor of automation challenges, and I personally cannot see anybody beating compact claustrophobia, for example, without at least a bare minimum automation. Massive AE2 bases are a requirement pretty much only in GregTech dependent modpacks, such as Star Factory, Nomi Factory, GTNH, TerraGreg, etc. Though I'm sure you might be able to find an exception. And of course, games like Factorio expect you to make a factory no matter what, no matter how dysfunctional. It's just like this clip of me suffering with Argospheres. Yay, Argospheres only, pre-expansion Factorio. Weepy! Although in a good modpack, the problems you'll have to deal with shift and morph during gameplay, forcing you into different solutions. You can group your automation solutions into an n-dimensional linear interpolational graph, also known as the political compass. Yay! Who's my little slop-maxing reductionism enjoyer? Jerry, bring in the reductionist graphs, boys hungry! In GTNH in particular, it seems that as the game progresses, the objective progression choices you have to begin thin down, most likely due to practical considerations of modpack development. There is only so much you can add to a modpack in a given period of time. This lack of choices is often said to shepherd players towards a certain playstyle. In less well-designed or less expensive modpacks, this is felt since day one, with the fun way to play and the optimal way to play being clearly visible, and worst of all, singular, or even worse, absolutely trivial or boring. However, when things are well enough put together, there will be meaningful choices, challenges and interactions laid in front of you in any gaming experience, be it modern Minecraft, be it any other gaming experience. Cogmine, for example, ignoring for now the question of optimal play. I'll talk about that in another segment. First axis of the political slop maxer graph: progression pusher versus wind grinder. This one applies in all parts of the game, but mostly in the beginning of a pack where the options start opening up. Will you try to squeeze by to get the most efficient recipes? Will you make tons of temporary solutions in order to progress a more favorable game state? Will you blaze by the early game if it means sinking in a technical depth? Or will you build up solidly, have a nice functional orderly base, even if that means you unlock tech slower? Pushing too hard for progression will probably leave you very neurotic and worn down. On the other hand, too wide of a grind and it'll take too long of a time to get to technologies that might have really helped you out. It's situational. Second axis: active play versus passive play. If you go for a benzene setup, all your energy needs and more are corresponded by the infrastructure itself. You invest time into the infrastructure, it provides forever and ever a constant stream of power and raw materials with near zero maintenance required. Oil, in the other hand, is accessible early on and with less effort. Mog's energy early game evolves into interesting logistics challenges and, simply by existing, solos almost any organic and hydrocarbon chemical product line in the game. Extreme flexibility. The cost? You need to drill it, move the drill every once in a while, and move the crude from drill to factory. Doesn't sound like much, and in my personal opinion as an oil enjoyer, it isn't much, but if you want a truly passive playstyle, this won't do. If you look at the progression labor time function that tracks, well, what it says on the tin really, the ratio between time investment and progression obtained, we can characterize an active player as someone who seeks to maximize the progression bit, and a passive player as someone who is content to slam 30 stacks of aluminum in a Canthal HP power blast furnace, leave the game running in the background, and come back to some nice freshly baked aluminum. This is to say, maximize the laziness bit. Third axis: complex automation versus simple automation. Will your base be mostly defined by separate setups connected to each other in simple and tested manners, or will you dive into the dark magic of open computers? Why use good solutions when you can use complex solutions? It worked out for me in compact claustrophobia. Just overprogram a robot to cut down a tree and beep at you. Yep, completely functional. And of course it's an extreme example, but you get what I mean. Fourth axis, rationally organized base versus creative and original base building. Pretty self-explanatory. You know, to me it is more a question of aesthetic principle than anything. Well, you can tell I'm the disorganized kind of player. It's organic growth, okay? Things organize themselves, trust me. Well, you can tell I'm running out of steam for this bit. I think I've already breached a lot of topics and well, yep, here's your PhD. I guess you earned it. Of course, I can't teach you how to play. You need to, play by yourself. I mean, if you made it this far in the video, you probably just enjoy schizo ranting anyway. But I hope to have given you at least some inspiration or something for the higher level approaches of this modern Minecraft thing. I at least thought it was somewhat interesting anyway. Anyway, on to the conclusion. Any limited completable system with a set of start conditions and a goal condition that includes games, in fact this question is often applied to games, has at least one solution. This is to say, an optimal set of moves to follow. Returning to modded Minecraft. It can be an optimal automation solution for a particular challenge, or an optimal progression path that you should follow in order to maximize progression towards the goal condition and minimize time spent. However, as we've discussed previously, the completion of the goal of a modpack in itself has no value to us. However, optimal play demonstrates itself in the basic way we interact with the game, irrespective of gameplay goals. It is an entire approach to gameplay that manifests itself in many manners, including but not limited to min-maxing. The search for optimal play often plays into the communitarian environment of video gaming, with people sharing and copying each other's builds, basing themselves on objective standards of performance. Sometimes optimal play is so desired that one, instead of finding personal solutions for gameplay problems, simply copies known good builds. It happens in more games than modded Minecraft, like the blueprint merchants in Factorio. Why interact with the game when you can assemble your base like Lego? What is the optimal way to play chess? First you open your preferred search engine, then you open Stockfish. Even Magnus Carlsen, the Cristiano Lusui of chess, cannot beat Stockfish. In fact, we can think of professional chess players as people participating in a very elaborate human-only challenge run of chess. And this is a great way to spice up your gameplay. Challenge runs forcibly change the way you interact with the game and what solutions are optimal, recovering the magic of finding optimal solutions. But I have an even more revolutionary idea. What if we just don't care about optimal solutions? When we stop caring about optimality and truly deliver ourselves to the journey over the destination, the amount of possible playstyles explodes into an exponential function of possibility. The only thing we must lose is our shame, and paint our artistry into the canvas of our lives. As Baudelaire says, if we haven't let an optimal play paint the banal canvas of our lives, it's because, alas, we were not brave enough. He says that, right? I think it does. Or is it something about cutting grapes with knives? Well, I forgot. Yep, that's the conclusion. Deal with it. Just play the mod pack you want to play the way you want. Idiot.